I'm here with Reena Vekaria, who is a teacher by profession and by passion in many aspects. And we're here as part of Beyond the Bindis Hindu Women's Festival 2021. Um, Namaste, Reena.
Namaste.
We're here and we're going to have a conversation about a recent book that you wrote on Mausiji.
It's just a story of what some or who some would call a very ordinary woman. But I think once you finish reading, you'll definitely understand that she was slightly extraordinary, almost superhuman, I'd say.
Nice. So tell us a little bit more. Who is this extraordinary woman? Who is Mausiji?
Mausiji was, when she was born in 1905 in Vardha, which is in Bharat, is in India. And obviously life was very, very different to how it is now in 1905. When she was born, her name was Gamal. And even from a young age, she kind of displayed a very forward-thinking attitude. She used to think differently and almost above average, not like the average child at that time who may have believed in all the different castes, for example, or wasn't really interested in playing, etc., all the time. I mean, yes, she did that, but going to the mandirs and going to bhajans and kirtans and working with her aunts during the plague and doing all this seva, and making bold statements like, I don't want to marry anybody that is going to ask for dowry, these kind of things. Um, so yeah, she was definitely a child who was very different to the average child, whatever that means in this day and age now.
She wasn't afraid.
Say that again, sorry.
She wasn't afraid. It sounds like, of speaking out or saying how she felt.
No, she wasn't afraid at all, and she used to put her friends in the right place as well. Often, when they used to play with their dolls and things like that. But I mean, she was very lucky. She was born in a family where they allowed her to be educated, but at that time that wasn't a very common thing. So I think education was a very, very powerful tool. She was more aware of what was happening around her, and I guess you can't really be that strong person or without knowing what's happening around you, and your response to it. And even sort of standing up to her teachers and things like that, when she thought something wasn't happening in the correct way. But I think the real test came when she was 14 and she got married. And she did marry somebody who didn't ask for dowry after. So yeah, 14 years old. Um, and her husband, Purushottam Rao, was a widower. So he already had two children. So she was 14, such a child herself, but then, yeah, essentially a mother, really. And nobody would have even guessed that they weren't her children because the way she treated them. Um, I remember a story about her husband who didn't really like the adorning of the flowers in her hair, so she never used to do it herself. Her name was Lakshmibai. It changed. It was a tradition to change after marriage. But she used to do it in her daughter's hair all the time. Then she had six other children as well. Um, yeah, so it was yeah, and when she got married, she rather than all these social events and playing cards, etc., she used to try and educate the ladies in there's a lot happening in the world. We need to know what's happening in our country, and we need to protect these women, because I think she used to read a lot in the newspapers daily about attacks and things like that on women, and there was that thought always in her mind, like, how is this happening? They must be educated. Something must be done. So really, I think just trying to awaken, even whilst being a wife, being a mother, um, you know, the way she just managed everything. Everything was finely decorated in her house. She was an amazing cook, and you just think, how was this all possible? Um,
Now I understand.
yeah,
Superhuman.
yeah.
Amazing. So not only was she inspired by the world around her, but she was trying to inspire and trying to awaken, like you said.
Yeah, so I think she was both inspired and inspiring. So when she was younger, there used to be these gatherings organized in her house just for women, just so they could read the newspaper and find out what was happening. So
A journal.
exactly, yeah, yeah. So
So then, where did this lead to, like later on in her life,
uh,
moving slightly forward?
yeah, so she I think she was really massively inspired by so she actually became a widow at the age of 28, and then she had all of that to look after. But as her sons grew, as her children grew, that's when her inspiration came. She was very much inspired by the Ramayana and the power of Sita, I would say. Um, and you know, a lot of inspiration with like Gandhiji, who used to come and give local talks and things like that. And you know, every woman must be like Sita, every woman must be like Sita. And I guess there's always that wondering, why is it always the lady's responsibility? Why does the woman have to be like Sita? Why can't the man be like Ram? But you know, she was inspired by his words when he said, well, actually, if the woman became Sita, that the man would naturally become Ram. um,
Okay.
yeah, so really powerful in that sense. But she was massively inspired by the change she saw in her sons. They were really disciplined, their behavior was changing, etc. And then that's how she kind of got introduced. I think one of her sons needed to buy a nun for Shaka, and then they were having almost like how you'd, I guess, in this day and age in a school, have a parents' evening. Um, but at that time, she was mother and father, as you know, so she would have had to meet Dr. G. And she thought, right, something's got to be done. You know, we need to get these women awakened. We need to make sure that they essentially are aware of how powerful they are. Because if they don't know about the Hindu Dharma, then, you know, these are the women who are inspiring and teaching the next generation. So if they don't know the right information themselves, they're not going to be able to teach it, right?
You
So
always have this bigger picture in mind.
yeah,
Amazing.
definitely a much bigger picture. Because if you look at the starting of Shaka and the starting of Samiti, it was very different. Um, because the world at that time was very much a man's world. You know, British Raj, men go out and they do this, and women stayed in the home. Um, so to start a Shaka, much less just leave the house just to buy some fruit and veg, for example, or something like that, was you know a different thing at that time. So I'm sure she would have had many a door slammed in her face, you know, or doesn't, you know, my daughter, I don't want to let my daughter come to this kind of thing. So yeah, no doubt, definitely lots of challenges. But as people understood the importance of the nation and the importance of this work, um, you know, it just spread and spread. I mean, she taught herself how to ride a bike even to start being able to move quicker. I'm terrible. I mean, I just about managed it or re-managed it during the first lockdown. But yeah, definitely a true tale of inspiration.
Amazing. So, so she went on. She was the founder then of Samiti,
Yeah, so
and
she
she
was the
laid
first.
down
Yeah,
the
yeah,
reason behind. Okay, amazing.
yeah, absolutely. She's what you'd call the Pramukh Sanchalika, or the Adya Pramukh Sanchalika, the first ever lady to begin. And it's quite funny actually, because I was just doing a bodhi on the weekend, and somebody asked me, okay, so her name changed from Kamal to Lakshmibai, but how did it change from Lakshmibai to Mausiji?
Yeah.
And you'd think, yeah, how can one person have so many different names in just one lifetime? But um, that name came from the Sevikas. It came from the Shaka
Okay.
nurse, really, because Vandaneeya is basically another word for like honorable or respected, really. And Moshi or Mosi is it's almost like a family relation.
Cool.
So she was also somebody who, you know, when there were Shaka camps or shibirs happening, she would be I mean, I wouldn't really call it the medical room, but the area where if somebody was injured or they weren't feeling that well, you know, she'd be there all the time making sure they were okay. um, so there's a lot of attributes to her personality, you know, completely confident, you know, very outspoken. um, so but I wouldn't say always confident, because I think she herself probably thought that you know, she wasn't that great with public speaking. And I find this really hard to believe. When I was reading up on it, I thought, oh my good goodness, a woman like this. But she had stage fright, so she would, yeah, So what she would do is when she had Moldics or when she had to deliver a talk, she would write it out and she would hand it to somebody else. Um, so I would say, Tejal, I'm feeling really shy. Would you be able to do my talk for me today?
So
And then she'd
heard
sort of sit.
someone else's voice.
Yeah, and then she'd sort of sit in the audience and kind of be like, oh, oh, wish, oh, yeah. And you're just like, she obviously thought there's no better way of saying, of me giving my message across perfectly unless I do it myself. So, she overcame that. She learned how to ride a bike. We're talking about a woman who, during the partition, India, Pakistan, she and another lady are sitting, the only women on an aeroplane going to Karachi to see the Sevigars there. Um, we're dealing with somebody like that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
Amazing, amazing. And I think, like what you said about her not being confident in things as well, it shows that she was real. She was. Um, we've all got fears, and we've also all got many aspirations. And sometimes she showed that she was able to overcome that fear to achieve those aspirations and to make her vision come to life. And she definitely, almost certain that she had so many obstacles, but found a way to overcome them. And actually, I'm people from the older generation really inspire me because they have a journey. They have a journey that, which a lot of it, we only know the highlights of it. We don't know their day-to-day
yeah,
struggles.
yeah.
Even like with my grandparents, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, to tell me about this and tell me about that. And for them, it's nothing. It was just, that was normal then. But for
Yeah.
us, it's huge. There's such massive, valuable life lessons, and how do you think that Mausiji would have, if she was in today's world, how do you think that she would have used this skill of empowering people and empowering women or girls, like females in particular? How do you think that she would have used it?
So, I mean, I guess we have to
Implement.
understand that empowering women doesn't necessarily mean um, depowering men, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? It's not, and I think it's almost just like in today's world, it's like in today's world, it's just like they're completely polar opposites. But Mosiji was really, really averse. She loved, she loved the history. She was so great at reading. And I feel like somewhere down the line, there may have been that connection that deep, deep down in our Hindu dharma, there's no man and woman. Yes, she did Samaj work and she was trying, if the men were up here during that time, she was trying to sort of bring the women up because it was a mental struggle, it was a social struggle, it was a spiritual struggle, and probably even a physical one as well. But deeply rooted in our dharma is the idea of the Adi Shakti, or the masculine and the feminine, and how they're not actually separate, it is just the one. So
Yes, very much complementing each other, isn't it?
exactly, and I feel like she she would be, I mean, it's so hard to say what she would think or she would say, but I'd imagine there'd definitely be that pride there that the gap is closing. I don't think I don't think we'd be able to say it is completely closed because there's a lot of aspects in our society today where that's not the case. But I think she'd definitely be pleased with the amount of Samiti work. There's over what is it, over 3,500 shakas in India at the moment. God knows how many branches of extended work Vivid Kshetras sort of past that. We've got all these shakas and all these Mahila Milans in the UK. Outside Bharat, there are camps happening in India just for international or non-resident Indian. It just, I think she'd be really, really impressed by it and just love the fact that the girls have a voice now, because the Samaj at that time and the Samaj now is very different. I think they had to play a bigger catch up then. So she had a work cut out for her. I mean, and now I'm not saying that it's easy, but possibly easier. Um,
That we stand on the shoulders of giants, don't we? So
yeah,
a lot of the path has been paved for us. For
yeah,
example, even now, like on a more micro scale, for example, like I have elder siblings, and the younger sibling is always more fortunate. also a little bit more spoiled, but definitely confession. But definitely more fortunate because the older sibling has kind of paved that way. And just like that, you know, our ancestors, they've kind of like paved that way. They've done the hard work, and now it's our duty, I would say, to make the most of the opportunities that are now available to us that weren't then. And going back to one of the first points that you made about education, you know, there's no divide in education anymore, and you find an equal number of, you know, you can walk into a hospital and find female doctors and male doctors. You can go and have female engineers and male engineers, and female artists and male artists. Like, there's no, you know, and we hopefully be inspired by people like Mausiji to say, I'm going to make the most of this opportunity of having an education or being able to fulfill dreams. We're able to have dreams, you know, and dreams are, back then would have been on a different scale compared to now. And I think that in itself is very empowering. And I love the point about, you know, we're two halves of a whole, really, males and females, to use that Shakti as Shakti, you know, that to really, really utilize it, and embrace it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think the world, I guess the wider vision back then, you know, during the British Raj, etc., would have been different to now. On the flip side, like, you know, we there's a lot of, oh, you know, men can do exactly what women can, but on the flip side, even like, say for example, the job of a chef or something like that, you know, in Mausiji's time, that was the job of the lady. She would just be doing that in the kitchen. And now, you know, you've got these male chefs, like huge names, etc. But that balance is definitely important. And in Mausiji's reading, she loved reading about Swami Vivekananda. Actually, she loved reading his work, and he gave this incredible analogy of an eagle, or any bird, really, just sort of just saying that they can't fly with one wing. You're either just stationary, just sort of flapping in one place, or just going around and around in a circle. And you know, as long as the society isn't awakened, you just like a bird needs two wings, the society needs both men and women to sort of be equal.
It's like, isn't it?
Yeah,
You can't clap with one hand, you need both hands to clap. So that's really, really beautiful. And also in your, Reena, you're a teacher of yoga, and balance is such a prominent factor of it, isn't it? It's always we're trying to obtain. So I think we could talk for hours about Mausiji and her works, and how, you know, I really want to read the book now. I'm very, very curious.
We'll see if you can get you a copy.
Please. But yes, no, thank you so much, Reena, for taking your time out to having this conversation with me, and for more people to know about people like Mausiji, people who have made change and inspired, but will also continue to inspire the generations to come.
Yeah, I hope so, because I guess I can very safely say that I don't think I would be sitting here knowing half, not even the smallest fraction of what I know in terms of our dharma, etc., if it wasn't for her, really. So yeah, she is, so we are. It's that's all we can say, really.
Awesome. Well, namaste, Reena.
Namaste. Thank you very much.